Well, welcome to week 6, Nonprofit Program Planning and Evaluation. Today is the logic model, or I should say this week is a logic model, right? It's not going to be a bad week for you. And the key to getting through this week is to really pay attention when you're moving things from the theory of change over here to the logic model. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to start off here with the program title. Put your program and title right in there. And then your program purpose statement, you're going to pull this over right from your theory of change. Now, what you're going to do next is you're going to start over here in the long-term outcomes section, and you'll notice that your condition or status here, right? So what I want you to do here is I want you to go ahead and list all the outcomes that you're going to have. Now, if you've got more than 4, don't do that. I mean, I'm just wanting to see that you recognize that you may have more long-term outcomes here. And then you'll go back to your theory of change, and you're going to look at your intermediate term outcomes, your change in behavior status. And you're going to put those in this block right here. Now, here's what I'd like you to do on that. I only want you to list the intermediate term outcomes that belong to the first long-term outcome you've listed over here in this column. So while you may have listed, 2, 3, or 4 in the long-term outcome, I'm going to be looking to see that the intermediate terms outcomes connect to this first long-term outcome. Then go back to your theory of change, and you're going to look at your short-term outcomes. And what you're going to do is those are going to go in this block. Now, what I'd like you to do here in this column is list the short-term outcomes that only belong to this intermediate term outcome, which in turn belongs to this particular long-term outcome. So what I'm getting you to do is I'm getting you to map things horizontally as we read the logic model from left to right, or even for that matter from right to left. So just again, it's going to come right out of the theory of change, one long-term outcome here, and you know what? Come to think of it, don't even list the others. I think for readability, let's just keep it simple. So give me one long-term outcome here. Give me the intermediate term outcomes that support that long-term outcome. And then give me the short-term outcomes here that support the first intermediate term outcome here. Then when you come over to outputs, you'll be able to drop those. Those are going to be the things you're going to monitor as a result of the activities. So these are going to be your interventions, in other words, right here in this column. So I would start here by populating what the particular activities you're going to use in your program to support accomplishing the short-term outcomes, intermediate term outcome, and long-term outcome. Now, the thing is this logic model can get pretty big, and so lots of different layers. You could have, if you needed to, you could have one logic model per outcome if you had to. So the idea is not to crowd this document. The idea here is you're thinking 30,000-foot kind of picture of condensing that theory of change into what it may look like. Now, over here in the outputs, what you're going to do here is you're just going to tell me what you're going to be tracking. Now, if you scroll up here into the directions of this thing, for an example, here's our activity, which is a budget class. You could think about, like if you're thinking about outcomes-oriented outputs, things that focus on the person, you could say like number of participants attended or number of participants completed class. Or in process, it's about the number of classes that you taught, the number of hours that you taught, or the number of instructors that taught, for instance. And those are going to get dropped right into here. I do not need specific numbers, okay? And the same thing is I do not need any indicators. You will put no indicators in any of these blocks, okay? Just the long-term, intermediate, supporting intermediate term, supporting short-term for that intermediate term. You're going to tell me what activities right here are going to connect to these outcomes, and then what you're going to be tracking as far as outputs. Last but not least, I want you to list over here in this column of resources, I want you to list the staff that you think you're going to need in a big picture kind of sense. The spaces that you think you'll need to carry off the activity, what kinds of support from other parts of the organization you think you may need, and then any relationships or partnerships you think you're going to need, all dedicated to carrying off the activity, which ensures or facilitates accomplishment of your short-term outcomes, which lead to accomplishing the intermediate and then the long-term outcomes. Okay, that's it. If you have any questions, as usual, feel free to reach out. Remember, no indicators on this document, and over here in outputs, no specific numbers. Just tell me what you're going to count. All right, talk to you later.